Hello, how are you going? And thank you so much for attending today. My name is James, commonly known as Jimmy, and some of you might know me from my involvement in the YAR, but also my involvement in moderating yesterday's knowledge sharing session for the Asia Pacific Wellbeing Focus Point. I really want to thank you today for attending and for being part of this really amazing process over the course of about the last year. Today, we have some fantastic speakers and panelists who are going to be helping to answer your questions. I think without any further ado, I want to make sure they introduce themselves. So the first one I'm going to get to introduce himself is Dr. Vela Pandian Ponasami from the Institute of Youth Research in Malaysia. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, James and Jane. Thank you very much. And it's a good opportunity for me to be here as well today. And yeah, as you guys, James mentioned earlier, so my name is Vela, so you can call me Vela as well. And I'm going to be the panelist for today. And fantastic topics which has been highlighted by the young researchers, in the Asia Pacific region to be highlighted today. 5 topics, very good topics. And I've gone through some of the topics and, the argument and all that was fantastic. And we will look forward to share more in our sessions and also able to pick up some questions from you guys to improvise on your research as well. And it's a good opportunity again for me. And thank you very much for UNESCO for such a wonderful initiative taken. And thank you guys. So I'll pass it on to you, James.
Thank you very much. The next speaker we have is Anak Agung Mia Intentilia. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, James. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Greetings from Bali, Indonesia. My name is Mia Intentilia. You guys can call me Mia. It is an honor for me to be one of the panelists of this session. I am a lecturer and head of ASEAN and International Studies Center at Universitas Pendidikan Nasional here in Indonesia. And my center aims to provide more information about ASEAN and international issues from perspective of political security, economy, and social culture. And I work to fulfill 3 main duties of higher education, such as teaching and learning process, research, and community service. Regarding today's topic and today's agenda, I would like to express my appreciation to UNESCO and all research teams for organizing this event. It shows that youth can have opportunities to share their point of view related to several issues in regard to COVID-19 pandemic. So this is an event to let the young voice can be heard, and in individual level, it can also enrich their research experience and also to build strong network. So looking forward to having a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And finally, we have Christina Latu. Please feel free to introduce yourself, Christina.
Thank you, James. Hi, everyone. I'm very thankful that I'll be a part of this panelist. My name is Christina Lato. I'm from Tonga. So I'm representing our little island Tonga from the Pacific. And I'm really glad that I was chosen so I can voice out the voice of the youth here in Tonga, because we've been affected by the COVID-19, and not only financially, mental, and also with our well-being. So I'm looking forward for this discussion and also to see what we can bring in so help our youth during this pandemic. Thank you, James.
Thank you very much, Christina. Really appreciate it. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce the session itself. Now the session itself is what's known as a fishbowl format. What that means is that we're going to have people basically asking the panelists questions one at a time. The first 3 people we have in this fishbowl is we have Ayesha Mahanti, we have Van Vong Nyokvi, and Puong Gui. So in that order, I believe, feel free to make them spotlighted so we can ask them, they can ask them the questions they want to ask the panelists. Ayesha, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Am I audible? Okay. So my name is Aisha Priyadashini Mohanty, and I'm the co-team lead for UNESCO Youth Researchers Asia Pacific team on youth well-being. I'm really grateful to have conversations with all of you here today. As a part of our research focus, we looked into the perceived barriers faced by university students in the Asia Pacific region. 60% of the young people across the world live in the region, and the impact of COVID-19, which has been experienced around the world, certainly has had high implications within the region. Our research has shown that 45.2% of young people within the age of 18 to 25 years have a fear of confidentiality and trust in accessing mental health services. My question to the panelists is that, do you believe that evidence-based quality reports and evaluation through previous consumers of the services could improve this trust deficit, or we could do something more to be able to bridge this gap between institutions and people?
Can I answer that?
Feel free to start. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Aisha. If I mentioned your name correctly, I think in terms of the data collected, the facts and figures that we have, definitely it's going to be a good platform for us to improvise, to improve, but it should be aligned with the government policies and also government initiative as well. I've seen so many data out there through research, so many information out there, but how is this data or the information is used by the policymakers, by the government, to make sure that the policy towards helping the youth is out there. So that is something which I see a bit lacking of. I mean, we should have more, and I'm encouraging the young researchers to come with more facts and figures, more data, more information about the youth involvement and also affecting in this due to the pandemic. But how could we leverage this input to the government? So that is the very, very challenging part that we need to work as well. It is not just the research, but also to look into a platform how we could disseminate this information to put it as a policy or any changes that can bring benefit to the youth, no matter what countries are there. So that means for me, I'm going to emphasize here, and I'm going to put a very strong point here. Research, a finding should come along with, creating a platform where to identify the loopholes to help the young researchers and also the young people affected by the COVID-19.
Certainly, I think a part of our research focused on identifying these barriers that we feel that exist within, and a larger part of the conversations that emerged from these young people were how stigmas were furthered in structural systems and sort of have discriminated possibly people with mental illness. Almost 44% of the young people within the region affirmed that they sort of lacked social support systems, or they faced embarrassment in accessing these mental health services. And one of the respondents has also affirmed that if we look into the research for mental health, there's rarely any implications that there have been studies by Freud, Lacan, or anybody in that matter. We do have community models that exist in Japan and Taipei, and of course, community models existing across the Asia Pacific region that we could leverage. I really wanted to ask to Dr. Velipin, do you see young young people being a part of these policy spaces. A larger part of the conversations also emerged. There was a lack of intergenerational dialogues, and many respondents felt that the governments could do more. So do you feel that we could increase these spaces where policy spaces where we could include the aspirations and views, and in fact involve the young people in designing policies, so that there is a bridge in the trust deficit between the institutions and the people they are supposed to take care of?
Agree with you. One of the things that crossed my mind is about increasing the number of young people in the parliament as well. You know, I mean, there are some countries are doing it. You know, I can quote some examples. In Malaysia, we have a parliament for youth. Okay, and I want that to be more active as well. And in the normal parliament as well, you know, we need to have more young people. So that means the young voices are heard. You know, and there are a few other examples that I can give. This is, I mean, Malaysia is also part of the Asia Pacific, but I can just give some good examples of Malaysian initiative to make sure that, you know, the young voices are heard by the policymakers. So one of the initiative is to create, it's like they call it in the local language PM to PM. So that means they want a young peoples to be an advisor for the Prime Minister office. Okay, so we have selected, I mean, in Malaysia, it's not implemented yet, but we have already selected under the Ministry of Youth and Sports. We selected close to 20 people in the various aspects of expertise. They are all young people below the age of 30. To be the advisor of the Prime Minister of Malaysia, to make sure that, you know, the young voices are continuously listened. You know, that is one good examples that can be a model which we can use. That, you know, again, these people are researchers. These people has got a very nice, you know, very good brain for them to give some new cutting edge information for the government. And by the same time, if they are given this opportunity, definitely I think they can contribute in a greater way for the development of the country. So I think if all the Asia Pacific, you know, again, I wanted to stress, if you look into the world population among the youth, I think 60% of this youth population falls in Asia Pacific region. So that means we have quite a number of young people out there, and they need to be exposed in this sort of initiative. Otherwise, you know, you guys are young, you know, not us anymore, but you guys have to come forward. I mean, I have to thank this personal thank to UNESCO, because I think this is a fantastic, you know, platform to create a young researcher to get involved in research, especially look into the policies, suggesting, recommending some important things to be highlighted at the higher level. I think that should be the way forward.
Absolutely. I do agree that, you know, young people being a part of the systems, at the end of the day, the institutions, they stand on the credibility of the people that are made from them. So yeah, I do definitely affirm, and that's what most of the respondents within the region have also suggested as a part of the study as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Velipin, for answering our question, and I will hand over to James.
All right, no problem. Look, I just want to make also want to announce that if you have a question that you want to ask and come to the floor and ask a panelist, feel free to raise your hand and mention your question in the chat and mention your name to the question. So I just thought I'd mention that before we go ahead, as there'll be opportunities to do that later on. What we're going to do, there's now some technical issues. So I'm thinking, is Mazem Hussain, are you available as a panelist to speak? Because we had the other two speakers, but there's been some connection issues. So I'm just wondering if they're available. Oh, okay. And Kush, I think if you're available, feel free to step up to the floor. Okay. Look, there are some technical issues. So how about we, Yesha, if you want to ask another panelist or another speaker one of the questions, feel free to do that. And we'll just keep going with that until we can arrange and fix some of the technical issues happening here.
Absolutely, not an issue. I think someone's stepping up.
All right, Mia?
Okay, thank you, James. That's a really interesting question from Ayesha, and I read your research findings, and that's very impressive. So congratulations to you and all of your team. And I do agree with what you mentioned previously about the use of data and evidence. But another important thing is also on how you have this kind of strategy to disseminate this data. So provide the data to various stakeholders and give multiple conversations and multiple suggestions to your research findings. You can also disseminate this data and also all research findings with your team to academics, to media, for instance, and to society, because I also realized that the problem, especially in Asia, there's this existing stigma of accessing mental health professional. Therefore, it's our job together to have this collaboration to build awareness in society through education, for instance. And Ayesha also mentioned a very important point, and I always bring this point in every international forum when I speak, is the importance of intergenerational dialogue. Because with intergenerational dialogue, we can bring different perspectives from different generations with their own problems and with their own concern. And therefore, we can listen to one another and try to understand different perspectives. And Dr. Vela also mentioned about trying to encourage more people, young people, to join the parliament. And the current trend, at least in Indonesia, is that I see young parliament members now try to connect with people on social media. So that kind of dialogue is also important, and we all can join in those social media platforms to have this kind of a conversation. It's a very important point, and we need a collaboration from various stakeholders. Thank you, James.
No problem at all. And Christina, do you have any thoughts you want to add?
I'm still going through the notes here. So sorry, James, I'll pass this one. I'll come back to you.
No problem. That's all good. All right. So thank you very much, Ayesha, and thank you very much to the speakers. Our next panelist is going to be Ankush. So Ankush, feel free to step up. One of the technical assistants will do that for you. And feel free to ask your question to the speakers.
Sure. Thanks, James. Are you all able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, sure. Thanks. Yeah, thanks to everyone for this session. Thanks to the speakers and the experts for taking the time to do this. So I'm from the Southeast Asia team. My name is Ankush, and our team focused on the prospective impacts of COVID-19 on career prospects of fresh graduates in Southeast Asia. So this is basically tertiary education graduates, people who have graduated from either university or polytechnics and who have just graduated within the last year. So they are the most vulnerable. And so moving on to our recommendations, basically in our presentation yesterday, we highlighted 3 recommendations, one each for saying practice, policy, and research. And so for the practice side, we have that governments should try to leverage the digital capabilities, because in our research, we found that it is really the digital capabilities which have helped youth be more resilient in their job searches and adapting to a very difficult job market. From the policy side, our recommendation was to create targeted programs for sort of short-term hiring of fresh graduates, because we feel that this is going to be a much more a short-term issue than, say, perhaps in the longer term. In the longer term, maybe the economics of it will work out. But in the short term, these fresh graduates need to be absorbed. And a model here that we sort of looked at is what's happening where I am in Singapore, where the government has essentially partnered up with private organizations to subsidize hiring of fresh graduates at sort of, incentivizing private sector employers to hire fresh graduates. So that was under the policy side. And our final recommendation was on research strategies. So essentially what we are advocating here is that we continue research like the YAR program to sort of get more insight on youth employability and adaptability related to employment and how it can be bolstered. So yeah, just in a nutshell, these are the recommendations that our team came out with for our research. And for the experts, perhaps, I think what the question we had was, these are rather sort of broad, and it was particularly in a place like Southeast Asia, in a region like Southeast Asia, which has really vast levels of development and resources within the region. How best do you think, or rather, which of these is perhaps, in a sense, has that low-hanging fruit principle in which governments can quickly undertake some tangible measures in one of these recommendations? Which of these recommendations would that be? And perhaps how could that be institutionalized? Because the thing that we are seeing with COVID is that there's changes every day. The situation is even more different than when we started the project. So do these recommendations, then how do we adapt these to this sort of that we're seeing on the go? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ankush. Christina, if you'd like to start this time, if you're still available to answer.
Okay, thank you, James. I was hoping you can ask for me to answer this, because this really reflects that where I worked at Tonga Youth Employment and Entrepreneurship. We face this career strategies. So most of the students that finish from from graduates, fresh graduates, it's very hard here in Tonga to find jobs, because some of the employers, they stick to hiring the experienced candidates. So it's hard for us to place the youth to do the jobs, and also to encourage the employer to hire the youth that just graduate from school. So I think the recommendation for the policy to hiring fresh graduates is really important. So we can push to development the youth, so they can experience the working grounds. It's not just for the experienced staff. We also need to train the youth to experience working, and so they can have the bigger picture of why they're finished from graduates, and they know where to go, not just graduate and stay home. So I think this is recommendation from Ankush. Thank you and to your team for this recommendation. Thank you, James.
No problem. All right. Yeah, Dr. Bella Pandia, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, James. Thank you, Mr. Ankush. Fantastic questions just now, based on your recommendation. So I'm going to just touch on the third one. You did mention one of the recommendation is the digital platform, a way forward. Okay, I think I'm going to just give you one good example. If I can read this, because I quoted this, if I can read this with your permission, students at one of the school in Lebanon began to leveraging on online learning system, even for subjects such as physical education. So sometimes we might find a bit difficult how to do in a digital way the physical education and all that. But the most important point which has been highlighted here, it is not about the physical education, but when the students try to do video and send it over to the teacher, what physical education they have already done, but the amount of time that they use to video shoot and do the technical part of it, correcting and then editing and all those things, is something which is give them a great platform for them to move into the digital world. Okay, that is something which is the main concern. I think now we have to change that. Even like Japan and China, they've already moved into 5G technology. and it become like one of the important element in the teaching in schools, you know, due to the pandemic situation. So I think looking into the digital platform, I think that should be the way forward. And the second part that I'm going to touch here is our education system, you know, should have a quick change. You know, it should adapt to the current situation. It's not like moving very slow like what it has before. So now it's a time that everything needs to be changed very quickly. Okay, the education system, the system which we need at the moment, you know, we know that throughout the world, everyone stranded back home and doing a lot of studies back home, you know, in the last few years, you know, last 2 years, you know. So now, how can this education system can be changed to fast track the current situation? So that means it cannot move slowly, it should move aligned with the current situation. So that's the second one. And then I think the third one that I'm going to touch is the university graduates, okay, they have a fixed number of, you know, subjects to fulfill, you know, credits to fulfill, and then end of the year, when they complete all the credits, they will be given a degree or whatever. So the fresh graduate with little experiences struggle to go out, especially at this situation, to go and out there and work. So what we need to emphasize in the academic part of it is to upgrade, you know, maybe you guys have heard about this, these terms which has been quite highly used: reskilling, upskilling, cross-skilling. So these are some of the terms I think the university syllabus or any TVET, you know, the technical vocational studies and all that need to emphasize on. I think now it's a trend. It is not about the degree, it's not about the masters or whatever that we have, but it's about reskilling, upskilling according to the needs of the organization. So if the graduates are equipped with this particular knowledge, and how much the government in each of the country emphasizing on this, is going to play an important role for the youth out there as a fresh graduate to go and work independently outside. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't really goes according to the traditional way like those days. You know, when you do teaching in university, you must be a teacher. That's not necessary at the moment. I think the world is changing. I think the teacher need to have different set of skills for them to become a better teacher, and also in other fields as well. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. And Mia, would you like to add some comments?
Yes. Hi, Ankush. A very interesting finding on your research. So I would like to emphasize on the point of digital capabilities. And talking about the issue of these problems and challenges faced by a fresh graduate, I think it's very important and it's very crucial to have this collaboration among government, educational institutions, and also private companies. So I would like to share with you all the current conditions and some examples that I've been doing, and also some universities here in Indonesia. So for instance, my university and the ASEAN and International Studies Center, we try to provide this online internship, and we try to give as much opportunity for all of students outside the university to come to our university to do this online internship, and also to our own students, and try to find a lot of online internship opportunities for them to learn. And I agree with what Dr. Vela mentioned earlier, that lecturers and university have to adjust the learning process right now with the current condition and current situation. And in Indonesia, we have this program called Kampus Merdeka, or independent campus and independent learning, where we now focus more on inviting private sectors or professionals to come to the campus to give guest lectures, a hybrid or online setting, so that they can give a description and they can share their actual experience in the related industry to students. So it is not only about concept or only about theory, but also about the real connection and real link between what we learn on campus and also what is actually going on in the related industry. So a lot of campuses in Indonesia right now are doing this, and we send students to study directly to the related industry. So the certain time they have to spend on classroom, they can convert that into real learning process in a related company or a related industry. So that's actually really beneficial to help fresh graduate to find their proper place or to find their job later after they graduate. So partnership among government, private companies, and education institutions is actually very necessary in this context. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. And that's Ankush, thank you so much for a great question. We're now going to invite Shinvangshi, who's going to be the final panelist. So feel free to come to the screen and ask your question.
So greetings to all the panelists, my co-researchers, and James. So I'm the co-team lead for the youth well-being team for the Asia Pacific region. So as Aisha covered, our focus was on the perceived barriers faced by university students in accessing mental health services. So the question that I would actually like to raise is, so as we all know, there has been an increasing number of young people who've been impacted by mental health challenges, which have in fact been adversely impacted by the pandemic. Now, there are dialogues and discourses that in fact reflects socio-cultural and political biases and prejudices that in fact translate to perceived barriers. So do you think making structural accommodations by providing patient autonomy or creating conducive mental health care patient plans will in fact impact access to mental health services, especially in grassroots regions, and will in fact help mitigate the social and cultural barriers as well?
Fantastic. Which speaker would like to go first? Mia, you look quite interested.
Hi, okay, thank you, Shivangshi. Thank you for your question. Well, actually, I have been involved in 2 projects with my students at the university talking about mental health services and mental health issue. One project is in a national scale and the other in a local scale. And the finding of your research is actually aligned with what they shared during this project, saying that it's difficult to access mental health services, and also there's this social and cultural barriers that actually exist that prevent us, even though we know that we experience something and we know how to access it, but with this social and cultural barriers, we feel maybe hesitant, or we're not really sure to access mental health services. One thing that I found after I had this dialogue with my students at university is, first, it is very important to actually involve mental health professionals, because in a context where you don't know where should you share your story, and when you talk to your maybe parents or family or your close friend and they don't understand, and probably they can give you like a wrong advice or wrong suggestion, or try to keep that for yourself, and they don't want to talk about it anymore. So I think it's very important to involve mental health professionals in this context, because then they can give you a certain procedure or certain mechanism what you need to do, and that's like based on their educational background or their professional experience. So because mental health issue cannot be solved, I think, based on like your common sense or things based on your just your feeling, but you actually need to involve mental health professional. So I do agree with any initiatives or programs that make this kind of cooperation or collaboration with educational institution, with mental health professionals, so they can provide this access to students. So they will not feel confused anymore where to seek help, or whether that help or suggestion is actually correct or not for them, because it's very important to involve mental health a professional. Another thing that you mentioned about social and cultural barriers, I think it's important to spread awareness not only for the university student, but also to parents, to community, through community leaders. So if you have this small scale community group, or you have religious group, for instance, in several area or several religion, they can actually help in spreading awareness, so that we can somehow decrease or maybe hopefully eliminate the social and cultural barriers later in the future. So the role of community leaders in your neighborhood, in your community, is also very crucial, because it is not only an education for students who experience this mental health issue, but also people surrounding the students. That's from my perspective.
All right, fantastic. Dr. Villa, please go ahead.
Hi, Shivangsi. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to touch 2 points here. One, which is, I'm going to just touch on the social and the cultural barriers that you mentioned. Of course, in the Asian region, we got certain cultural barriers in terms of addressing this issue. But the COVID-19 has opened up the gate. Okay, I think the last 2 years, people have been talking about mental health more frequent and consistent compared to previously. That doesn't mean that mental health problems are not there previously, the last 10 years or 15 years or whatever. It is there, but only the last 2 years, due to the pandemic situation, people have been talking about it. So I hope that with your research, I think this barrier could be overcome by the stakeholders. I think everyone back in our country, I think everyone is talking about mental health, and everyone is talking about how to help the youth in overcoming the mental health issues and all that. So I think along the way in the next few years, with the initiative by the government and also the policymakers, I think that should be addressed. Okay, that is one. Second thing is, we're talking about the lack of, we talk about the mental health professionals, okay? And we have to admit this. I think this is applicable throughout the world, but I'm going to just emphasize on Asia Pacific, and I'm going to emphasize very close down to Southeast Asian region as well, okay? We really lack of mental health experts. Okay, so that is something that the government or policymakers need to look at. We might have a very good plan on a mental health, but to execute the plan, we need experts. Okay, I give you one good example. In the school, one of the research also indicated that at the higher learning institutions, lack of counselors or mental health experts to assist the students. What about students? We can consider students at the university a bit matured compared to the school children's. So these students, they have the self-resilience to overcome certain expectation of the mental problems. But what about the school children? 14 years, 15 years, 12 years, 13 years, not going to school due to the pandemic situation, staying at home, doing homework, which is, dozen of work, which is compared to when they were, live at school, I've got a kids always complain, and I've got so many people out there, they complain because due to the pandemic, we struggle doing all this work at home. Even at school, previously before the pandemic, they enjoy talking to their, the social aspect of their life has been taken care, but now they do not have that social aspects. They're missing it out. for the last 2 years. It's not 2 months, 2 years. So these are going to be a very crucial part that the government or any stakeholders need to put some emphasis on. So not only concentrating on a certain group of university students or any other group of youth, but also to look into school children who are also struggling. So I think, lack of the mental health experts need to be addressed, and lack of counselors, not only in schools, but also in a working environment. People are having so much of difficulties in terms of overcoming their mental health problems. So these are something which need to be highlighted. I think in the recommendation part, I think this part I've seen in many studies have been highlighted. So I hope that this one will put forward our agenda towards youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Christina, do you have something you want to say?
Sorry, thanks. I'm just going to support Dr. Mia's opinion on mental health issues. It's just that we need more counselors in school grounds, so they can support the students at universities, not only in the universities, but also the lower like 15 years old and all of them, because they're the next generation, so they need that support. So when they grow up and go to the universities, they know what to do, and we need that support from all the counselors. So I think that's I'm just gonna say that's all, James.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Shivanshi, and thank you very much to the speakers. We're now going to go into the Q&A. So the first question we have is from David, and each of the speakers you can nominate to speak to this if you would like. The question is, how important is data when presenting research to policymakers? What level of detail and data disaggregation would you suggest to include in our recommendations? Who wants to go first for that one? Yep, Dr. Villa, you're on.
Okay, can I go first?
Go for it.
Yeah, okay. The question is very much relevant, good. I think keep up doing your research. Data is needed. We need data, more data to make sure that, the solution towards the data will be taken in a more better way. We need more data, keep on doing research and all that. But what sort of data which is needed for the policymakers? I've seen the 5 studies which has been done. So most of the studies is done using a mixed method. Okay, a mixed method, quantitative and also qualitative studies, which are highlighted. I'm quite interested to look into a qualitative data, because the qualitative data sometimes you will get, even though the numbers of the respondent is smaller, but you can get the actual things that they are facing at the ground level. So I think the mixed information about the data that we can get from the research will be more appropriate to be tabled out in terms of the findings, and also in terms of highlighting the sort of policy need to be taken in the future. So I agree with that. The data is needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would another speaker like to answer the question? Okay, Christina, go for it. You're on mute, sorry.
Sorry. Sorry, James. Yes, I think we really need to collect the data. So it's important when we go back to see which one that we needed prioritize to do the policy, so we can write that policy. I think what Dr. said, it's very important. The many more data that the researchers are collecting, it will be best for the policy making. That's it, James. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mia, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I agree with Christina that data is actually very important, but it is also important to think also about the connection of your data or research finding with the priority agenda or sectors being prioritized by the government, be it in a national or local government. So when you have this research finding, you can also add more information or do your research in the agenda or sectors being prioritized by the government. And then when you can find connection between the agenda, priority agenda, and your research finding, then it will be better for you when you try to convince the policymakers to put your data into consideration. And also the research finding and data should also have connection with the recommendation. So be also mindful with the scope and focus of your research and how is that connected to the recommendation that you provide. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, we have another question here. Now this one's actually directed to Dr. Villa, so I'll ask you directly. It's quite long, so just bear with me. Question for Dr. Villa. Can he expand on the Malaysian case study of appointing a cabinet-level minister of youth, which he mentioned earlier? Syed Sadiq, the former minister of youth, for example, was one of the youngest cabinet members at 25 years old. What are some of the challenges or opposition to bringing a young person into the policy space, especially considering Asian countries may have a culture of hierarchy based on age? How can other countries replicate this model?
Thank you very much. I think that's a very relevant question. It is not that easy. Okay, I think I can give you another one of good examples also. I think in Indonesia, we have a young minister as well, the current one, if I'm not mistaken. The current one, I think so. The previous the minister for the Ministry of Youth and Sports in Malaysia is 25 years old, and he was, exactly the name Syed Sadiq. He was the minister. He's still a parliament member, and he's still very actively involved, even though at the moment he's under the opposition part of the government. So he's still very active, and I think we should encourage young people in that capacity to be part of the parliament, to consistently and also continuously voice out the voice of young people. We should have, and I would like also to see in the Southeast Asian region or Asia Pacific region to have more young ministers who can be like Syed Sadiq, our former minister as well. And it doesn't really matter whether you are in the cabinet list, or as long as you are still under the parliament, whether you serve as the government officials or the opposition, but you still can contribute to the nation by voicing out your points to the government to make sure that the policy, the changes and all that has been in place. So I encourage other members as well, other country members, to get involved. And coming back to the challenges, it is not that easy. I can't 100% represent him as a minister to mention this to you guys, but it is not that easy to be part of the opposition when you wanted to stand with your, standing on a certain issues and all that. And he was very successful in terms of implementing the vote for 18 years old, So, I mean, previously in the government, we haven't done the first voting for 18 yet, but it's already in place. he was the first one, the minister that we spoke to, he was the first one within his period of time as a Minister of Youth and Sports. He brought up these issues to the parliament and that has been approved. Okay, so now the young people, the youngest age who can contribute in the election, they can vote is 18 years now. Okay, but we haven't got into the first the election yet. Okay, so the government is looking forward, and that is not that easy. You know, he had to fight and justify, have to come up with some strong points why we should need this and all that. So I think finally he managed. When the government really implement that, that's a very good success for the government as well. But to be a young cabinet member is not that easy, and you have a lot of people around you, that you need to justify your points. You have to be very strong enough, argue and all that to make sure that you sustain.
All right, fantastic. We have another question from an anonymous attendee, this time to the whole all the speakers. How do we do better to involve communities, particularly in countries where the topic is taboo, to promote mental health support? And furthermore, how can we consider cultural perceptions in this area? Is there anyone that would like to go first?
Assalamualaikum.
Yeah, we'll get one of the speakers.
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to comment, we might be able to do that later on. I think we might be able to bring you back onto the stage.
Assalamualaikum and good noon. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm working in the Department of Youth Development under the Ministry of Youth and Sports, People's Republic of Bangladesh. And the discussion is very good. I enjoyed it for a long time. Could you hear me, please? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Do you have a question for the speakers?
Yeah, I'm from Bangladesh. I am representing from the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Hello?
Yeah. If you have a question, what we need you to do, we need you to write it in the chat. I'm happy to announce it. But that's the way we have to do things, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But I'm sure you have a great question. Just feel free to write it in the chat and then I'll rate it to the speakers. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Mojem Hussain. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm representing the Ministry of Youth and Sports. I'm enjoyed the long discourse and discussion. I think that the discussion is very good and it will give benefits to the youth working in Asia Pacific region. Especially unemployment and mental health are serious issues in COVID situation. So we put much emphasis on the two issues. First one is mental health and unemployment issues. Regarding these two issues, the government of Bangladesh is taking very good steps for the youth. And in Bangladesh, social media platform, online digital system, especially online training and virtual meeting has launched to participate for youth. And especially the Department of Youth and Development provide productive skills to the youth for their enabling approach and creating conditions. It gives small credit to the youth. So in the backdrop of the COVID situation, mobile banking system has been launched in transaction of small credit to the youth. and some innovative ideas are being taken to create job opportunities or in running small businesses through establishing link with business group. And you know, Bangladesh has developed some legal framework and policies, like it has formulated National Youth Policies 2017, updating the earlier one 2003, and even in keeping the SDGs in mind as well. Youth Action DoD has developed action plan for full implementation of National Youth Policy 2017 with the technical assistance of UNFPA and the finalization of Youth Development Index. And the government has passed the Youth Organization Registration and Operation Act 2015 and also has approved the Youth Organization Registration and Operation Rules 2017. We are happy that Sheikh Hasina National Youth Development Institute was also passed by the Parliament on February 25, 2018 in Bangladesh, where youth will get different sorts of training and they will have the opportunity to have higher degree from there. And this is all from Bangladesh, and the government of Bangladesh like
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the contribution.
yes, vehicle driving projects. One is vehicle.
Mose, I might need to cut you off there. Just we're running out of time, and we do need to jump onto the other speakers. So we'll jump on back to the question about mental health and how do we healthily promote mental health discussion and policy in cultures where it might be taboo. So out of the three speakers we have here, Dr. Villa, Mia, and Christina, is there someone who would like to start to discuss that question more? Mia, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How do we better involve communities, particularly in countries where the topic is taboo, to promote mental health support? I think it's very important for us to start a dialogue. And I think it is also important for us to acknowledge that the method or the approach can be different, because we cannot force the very same approach or to a very same method to all society and all parts of society and all part of the region or areas in certain country or certain area. So we have to acknowledge that we need different approach. We have to acknowledge that we need to understand that the method can be flexible, that it depends on the targeted areas or targeted groups. I believe in a dialogue. I believe in that where we listen to other people and we try to encourage people to try to understand the matters. And it's a good start for us to try to eliminate this stigma in the society, particularly because of the cultural barrier. What I can see from my experience is that a lot of people actually now provide educational content, be it in the form of videos, in the form of pictures. And when we open Instagram, a lot of Instagram accounts with their posts consist of a lot of contents and to promote mental health awareness. And then from a short video, 1 minute video, we can already understand a new term of mental health or where we can get support. So this kind of educational content like videos, pictures, and Instagram posts also show a real contribution by young people, especially in a youth-led action. Because I personally know some people who create this kind of Instagram account or this kind of a website where people can actually get a free counseling session where they can have like a peer-to-peer conversation. And that's actually help people who maybe don't have enough money to go to seek a professional, mental health professional. So this kind of youth-led initiative is also important. But when we talk about like other generation, or we want to really try to tackle this problem in more like remote areas, maybe we can also use a television. Or even in my experience, I know some groups who still have this routine radio programs to promote mental health issue and talk and have this open dialogue through radio programs to have this kind of issue being taught in certain targeted groups or targeted areas. So I know this will take some time to change perspective, obviously, and we will encounter a lot of challenge, but we need to start doing that. And we really need to acknowledge and appreciate a lot of youth-led actions and initiative when they try to involve communities to talk about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Dr. Villa, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I think there's some technical difficulties. He's frozen. So, okay, we'll let him fix that. Christina, do you have anything you want to say in the meantime?
Thank you, James. Like Mia said, the mental health, it depends from the culture of that country. So it's, for example, here in Tonga, the youth here are more afraid to voice out their decision making due to parents. The parents have the more they have to listen to the parents. So it's really hard for the culture for the country that have the more taboo culture. So it depends, like Mia said, it really depends on the culture. And also, if the country they can change the way they treat the youngsters, they can voice out and then help the community can help out by bringing in the new ways to communicate with the youth. So in order for them to be prepared and face the issue that we are the mental health during this pandemic. I think that's it, James. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Dr. Villa is back.
Yeah, James,
so Dr.
James, I'm really so sorry, guys, because just now I think my internet line is gone. But quickly, before it goes back again, okay, quickly, just wanted to highlight one of the main point. I think Mia also has mentioned about mental health issues, awareness creating and awareness and all that. So I just wanted to highlight here one point, which is what you call cross-executing groups. So I think this is something which is lacking. It is not going to be one-man show where if, let's say, the youth problem should be taken care by the Ministry of Youth and Sports, okay, not other parties. So that should not happen in the first place. If you want to address these COVID-19 issues, especially on a mental health. So what I mean by cross-executing groups is the connection and also interrelations between the government agencies, ministry, and also department who has got a direct impact in helping the youth in these particular issues. So that should be encouraged in a greater way. It is not like, for example, I give you one good example just now. In Malaysia, I can just quote, in Malaysia, tackling the youth problems, programs, or whatever it is not the sole responsibility of the Ministry of Youth and Sports. There are 11 other ministry which has got a direct involvement in terms of so how we are going to leverage on this connection. That's very important. It's not going to be one-man show. If, let's say, the cross-executing groups works together to look into all these policies and all that together, and their voice is much more stronger to bring into the higher level. So that is something which is lacking. I think the Asia Pacific region could, work on this to make sure that, it is not just the awareness, creating an awareness, but also in terms of the working relationship between the government agencies, ministry, and also department to make sure that we bring the agenda forward to help the young people out there. Thank you.
Fantastic, really appreciate it, and that's great to hear from all the speakers. We have another question here from Arena. In the countries of Central Asia, as it may be in others, there are different prejudices against young researchers and their approach to research. For example, they're not experienced enough is one concern people put forward. So what should we do with such prejudices and stereotypes against young people, and in particular, young researchers, by adult policymakers and academia, people in academia? Since for us, it is important that youth voices be heard. Is there anyone that would like to answer that first? Dr. Vela, you have the floor.
Yeah, I think we should encourage them. We should encourage them. We don't have any platform to stop them. I think this young researcher initiative is also one of the way forward. We need more researchers to come forward to address, issues pertaining to mental health or anything pertaining to the current situation, to make sure that the voice of the youth has been heard by the government. You need to push on, not really to stop them from giving an idea and also recommendation, because the young people has got a different perspective, a different perception, and need to be heard by the government or policymakers to make sure that it evolves. Even to the extent of the national budget. The national budget, I think most of the countries has got this initiative to make sure that they listen to the people down there, to make sure that what they want to be tabled out in the national budget as well, to make sure that everyone is looked equally with the budget which is needed. So I think the government should, through this initiative, I think we should encourage the young people to come up with the idea, and we should give them a credit and also give them a proper guidance for them to become a better researcher, to improve the research way how to conduct, and also there must be a funding agency to make sure that consistent funding will be given for these young researchers to make sure that more research will be looked into in the future. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Now, Ayesha, one of our panelists, has had her hand up for a while, so I just want to jump to you. Do you have a comment you want to make on this particular question?
Yes, thank you so much, James. I'm so sorry for taking up the space more often than given. Just adding and sort of linking the two prior questions as well. Primarily when we talked about community-led interventions and stigma around mental health, part of the conversations that emerged from our study showed that 75% of the respondents from urban areas also have this stigma. And as a recommendation, we have suggested that it'll be really nice for governments to sort of establish a national mental health ministry and possibly contribute 4% of their national GDP towards mental health care, because it's very crucial when one in every young person is suffering from anxiety and depression and they are facing challenges. So do you think that this is something that the governments could look into? And secondly, we have also mentioned that the Ministry of Mental Health could work with Ministry of Technology and Information and Communications to possibly reach out and do community-led advocacies and work in a collaborative space with religious groups, for example, like the Rabat Action Plan being implemented. Is there any sort of guidance on this point as well?
That's fantastic. It's a great contribution to the question. And so I guess as in, reinforcing the question that's been asked and sort of going on that with what Ayesha just said, does anyone else have anything they want to add to this question? All right, Mia, go for it.
James, can I give comments regarding the question about prejudice against young researchers and their approach?
Go for it. Yep. And if you want to perhaps tie in what Ayesha said as well, feel free to do that.
Okay, I would like to respond to this question by Arina about prejudice against young researchers and their approach to research. We have to admit that this kind of prejudice and this kind of thought actually exists, saying that young people or young researchers, they're not experienced enough, they have less experience. Yes, there are some people thinking that young researchers, they don't have experience, therefore the result of their research should be questioned. Yes, there are some people thinking about that, but if we just focus on that perspective and feel that therefore we can't do our research, then we will stop this effort, right? So instead of focus on that point of view, let's think from the other point of view, that young researchers actually bring fresh perspective. Young researchers bring new perspective, because young people, they experience the world from a different perspective. They live the world, they have different lifestyle maybe from the previous generation. So young researchers actually bring a fresh perspective. Young researchers bring new perspective. And by proving that, by providing a valid research design, and also can convince the methodology, and also can provide a research finding according to a scientific method, I think it doesn't matter if this kind of prejudice exists. And let's not make that prejudice stop us in being a researcher, but rather focus more on thinking that young researcher actually can bring fresh and new perspective. And research is also a learning process for all of us. Thanks.
No problem. And Christina, do you have anything you want to say on this matter?
Thank you, James. Thank you. I'm supporting Mia and also Aisha. I think if I said her name right, we need the new researchers, because they have the experience of the different lifestyles, and also like Dr. said that the more researchers that we have, the more data we collected, and then we know where our youth are today. And also there's one thing that crossed my mind, that if the new researchers believe themselves that they can do it, I think that's the main purpose. If they believe it, they can. They don't have to listen to other people or anyone that say this and that. But if they believe themselves, they can do the research. It's up to them to do their own. I think that's it. James, thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We have another question here, and it is, okay. The question is about the link between physical and mental well-being. Can policymakers take a holistic approach for mental health by tying in with existing sport policy? And what is the role youth can play in that? And there was some youth researching found yesterday that were actually discussing this, funnily enough. So it ties in well with that, which is quite good. Is there anyone that wants to go first that's particularly keen on this topic? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm not really familiar with actually the sport policy, but I think that having this holistic approach with mental health and also physical well-being is actually very important. And I read that one of the research team actually talking about this physical activity in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken. So probably one of the research teams could share to us a little bit about this physical activity and its importance in Vietnamese youth.
There was actually a there was a research team, as I said yesterday, that focused on that. I might see if I can bring some of them in at the end when the speakers have been done speaking to comment. I believe that Ayesha, you were actually in that team, weren't you? Is that correct?
No, we weren't, but examples have shown that positive correlation of physical health and mental well-being has been noted by one of the respondents as a part of our survey as well.
Yeah, I might bring you in at the end. We'll get to Dr. Vella now because Dr. Vella's keen to comment.
Yep. Thanks, James. I think I did mention in my previous conversation that you know, the cross-executing groups looking into these sports and also the mental health issues. I think the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Sports, Ministry of Youth, and you know, if let's say, for example, any other ministry or any other government agency who can come up with a policy to make sure that they have to, in the first place, have to sit down together to come up with a comprehensive policy which involve all these ministry. It is not going to be one-man show like what I mentioned. It is a sole responsibility of the Ministry of Youth and Sports. But it should be Ministry of Health, Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Sports, you know, depending on the country's available ministry according to the, you know, the Asia Pacific region as well. So they have to come up with what you call a comprehensive plan overcoming this this situation. So the physical education in sports should be implemented in line with tackling you know, mental health issues as well, because the grassroots level implementation of this at the grassroots level could give you a better chance for the youth to be in a better shape when they grow up in the future. So otherwise it's going to be like, you know, it's too late to shape them up. So the physical education from the beginning should be emphasized. It is there, you know, physical education is there. But my question is how much, or you know, how far the physical education in the syllabus of the particular country has been used widely of the policymakers to combat the mental health issues, or it is just another physical education programs. Okay, so that is something which has been really have to be looked at, you know, whether the current physical education system or education is in place tackling the mental health issues in the next 10 years. So the relevant ministers, relevant ministries should sit down together in terms of coming up with the policy for the mental health issues, because this is going to be a very costly issues in the future for any part of the world, any countries, you know, if it is not tackled in the grassroots level. So my point here I wanted to stress is inter-ministry, department, agencies and all that have to work together to come up with a comprehensive plan for mental health issues, involve physical education as part of it to make sure that, you know, they tackle this problem from the the grassroots level. Thank you.
Fantastic. And Christina, do you have any comments you want to make?
Sorry, James, I'll pass this one.
No problem. Okay, now we have one more. Okay, we have one more question. So we'll go, and that's by Cao Mai Huang. And the question is, how can schools take advantage of our researchers to maintain online physical education effectively in the long term? Dr. Vella, you have the floor.
Yeah, one of the platform that I could able to suggest is tackling this through the school. I think Ministry of, when you talk about school, the Ministry of Education in most of the most of the Asia Pacific countries, the Ministry of Education is the ministry who is in charge of the education system in the country, in the particular country. So I think through some platform, through the Ministry of Education, the research finding can be brought up, through the schools, and this finding should be highlighted at the higher level. And then if the policymakers at the ministry level, can adopt this particular recommendation, and that could be used as a platform to leverage into school levels. Okay, that should be the way forward. So that's my view on it.
All right, fantastic. Mia, do you have anything you want to say?
Well, I would like to actually congratulate all young researchers for all the findings. Even some of the findings are a new thing for me, especially about this physical activity. So congratulations to all young researchers. And it shows that youth can actually create a significant impact together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Christina, do you have anything you want to say? You're on mute, sorry.
Sorry about that. I'm just gonna say the same thing with me. Congrats to the researchers. They did a very good job of getting these findings and also the recommendation for policymakers. And we hope that this will help in the policy, because we need that platform to run the youth and also to look into unemployment youth, because we have to face that and help the youth nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, we started a bit late, so we can go a little bit over. So we actually have one more question from Ayesha. And the question is, reinforcing the question on specific national action plans, do we envision a substantial amount of budget bridge to bridge the parity of access to mental health and physical health care, as noted by the World Health Organization? Should it be more outcome focused or spending focused? The cost of treatment also emerged as a barrier for young people. So we'll go to about 33 past the hour. So just quickly, do any speakers have any thoughts on that? If no speakers have any thoughts on that, we can pass if you would like. Alternatively, Ayesha, if you have any, you wrote the question, so if you have any thoughts on that yourself and your own opinions, feel free to put that forward.
Thank you so much. So part of the recommendations that we specifically mentioned, and I think I just wanted to reiterate that a lot of substantial amount of budget funding that's being done, it's ranging in between 1% to 2%, and that is sort of fragmented right now across the various different governments. So it's sort of making it impossible for many young people to access the mental health treatments that is there. And 40% of the young people have affirmed that cost of mental health treatment is a huge barrier. So we have supported a lot of our findings have supported that 4% would be the most ideal number, considering a large amount of research has shown that this amount would really help bridge the gap. But I was just looking for specific responses from the panelists, if they see it more as a budget funding, or should it be more outcome focused, as has been noted in the model for Thailand, and it has been like a huge marker for success in the Asia Pacific region.
Dr. Vella, go for it.
I think we should have more, both. I would like to highlight even a budget Okay, budget funding is necessary, and also to make sure that the outcome is there as well. Okay, and it is not going to be like what I mentioned earlier. We need more money, more programs to make sure that the mental health issues has been taken into serious consideration by the government, by the country. And it is not only the responsibility by the government as well, it is also the non-governmental agencies, NGOs and the private parties which involve directly in helping the young people should come together as well. Okay, and my advice personally, in any countries in Southeast Asia and all that, whatever the funding that you guys are looking to combat these mental health issues, the funding should be brought into a right channel. So you know what I mean by right channel. So you have to make sure that you bring it forward to the right channel to get a proper funding, and you get a proper amount of money to really look into programs that you are having in mind, to help the young people out there, So this is something which is one of the main concerns. If you go to the wrong channel, you might end up not getting a sufficient amount of money or funding to assist in your plan or the strategies. So you might stranded halfway through. So a lot of programs have been stranded in such way because one thing is the funding is not enough, and then you can't even achieve your outcome that you are looking for. So my point here that get the funding to make sure that the funding reach to the proper reach through the proper channel to the respective organization or ministry or department or agencies, to make sure that you get enough or sufficient amount of money to support the program.
Fantastic. And just quickly, we need to wrap up. So Christina and Mia, do you have anything you want to add? Mia, go for it.
Okay, I can't really give a specific comment related to budget from the ministry, but I can also give comment regarding funding aspect. So we see now that there is this growing trend of private companies trying to give funding in terms of a lot of mental health issues, especially initiatives regarding a mental health issue. So we need also to see these opportunities to also try to approach private institutions so that they can give corporate social responsibilities as part of their contribution to society and to young people in the context of tackling this mental health issue.
Thank you very much. And Christina, just quickly, wrap it up in 20 to 30 seconds. Do you have any thoughts on the matter?
Okay, thank you, James. Just a quick one. I'll be basing on the budgeting. We need more funds for the youth, especially the researchers, so they can do their work faster, and also they can collect the proper data for their researching, and also for the NGOs and all the companies, private sectors. They also need the supporting and the funding so they can employ the youth as well, because most of the private sectors and the government, and also they hardly hire the unemployed youth due to the funding. So I think the funding is really important to raise that, so we can if we can raise the funding higher, that will be better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, well, that wraps it up for tonight. For tonight for me, morning and midday for some other people. But thank you. This is a really great finalization of a huge effort over the course of the last year for the Youth as Researchers Initiative. And I really hope you've all enjoyed this session. I really want to thank the 3 panelists and the 3 speakers. You've been absolutely phenomenal in the questions you've asked and the questions you've answered. So thank you. Have a nice rest of the day or night, wherever you are. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.